There are many characters in this world, but there is only a few whose identity can reshape the timeline, whose role can decide the story of the games. This one goes by many names, but even more identities. Some say he is the figment of a child's mind. Some say he is the tears of an agonized child. Some say he is the yellow rabbit or the living shadow. I myself, well, I believe there's a lot more strings attached.
You're broken. We are still your friends. Do you still believe that? I'm still here. I will put you back together.
Welcome back everyone, hope you enjoyed that special intro, and as you can tell, today we are covering Psychic Friend Fredbear, or the name I prefer, Plushbear. Here, we're mainly going to cover their identity in FNaF 4 and how that overall affects the story, but we will also cover unique details people have long overlooked that may change everything we know about a little yellow friend, but as implied, we're at the first established who Plushbear even is. So not wasting time, if you end up enjoying this analysis, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notifications down below. I'm trying new things in this one, but let's get right into it.
Don't be scared. I am here with you.
Okay, so before I get into who I think Plushbear is or isn't, I should first argue why I think the Plushbear has to be possessed. Firstly, he's able to teleport around, and it doesn't seem the bite victim is holding him as indicated by the plush shop kid. Plushbear also seems to only be visible to the crying child himself as he appears from all the main games, but no one else seems to acknowledge or see him. He also appears in a flower, and I'm sorry, you can't convince me that that flower is a camera. Anyway, his eyes are also an indicator of possession, pinprick eyes that match what other possessed characters before have done in the series. The eyes also glow and can go in and out, so it would have to be haunted. Even based on Sis's location, the plushie's appearance seems to have been altered by the possession, similar to how Charlie affected the puppet's mask, which added tear tracks. Scott Kaufman has also consistently approved merch, calling the Plushbear a possessed Fredbear Plush, which contrasts with how he handled the Cassidy Kazoo. And since we do know Scott does care about merch accuracy, I find it personally very doubtful he forgot this like multiple times. I could also make the argument that since FNaF 4's marketing and Steam description said it was the final chapter to the original FNaF story, that should mean the MCI and the puppet will be involved in FNaF 4, which means if the Plushbear is possessed, then by which of these spirits? Well, while my answer may be a bit obvious to most of you, I do want to first address a misconception and explain why the Plushbear is not William or anyone evil at all. Today, it is a very widespread belief that the Plushbear is malicious and seeks to gaslight and scare the bite victim into being unjustifiably afraid. This mostly stems from Plushbear's blunt dialogue about the man in the Fredbear suit catching him and his warnings about the shadows and what the crying child saw. But the problem for me here is, this relies on the assumption of the crying child seeing something innocent and mistaking it, his fear being unjustified. To me though, it seems pretty clear the bite victim did see something bad or a real murder, as I cover in these two videos. So when that assumption is forgotten, it makes the crying child's fear justifiable, and thus Plushbear's warnings. But one may fairly ask, why does the Plushbear tell the crying child that Mike hates him? We know that's not true based on the Night 6 minigame. Well, the answer there is pretty simple. It's just perspective. Mike torments the crying child every day without hesitation. So the crying child in Plushbear, you would assume he hates you, especially if you're a little kid. If Plushbear is possessed, then you'll likely be possessed by a kid, so his words would make sense. However, the real reason many interpret the Plushbear as being malicious is because they think he has to be William Afton, and the reasons for that, to be fair, are understandable. The Plushbear is in Afton's private room in this location, and has either a walkie-talkie or camera remote beside him, and Toy Chica, who represents William in UCN, repeats tomorrow is another day, and add by William telling Mike to put Babe back together, you have a very solid case. The issue I see though, is that as mentioned, there is a lot of evidence of him being possessed. Not only that, but we've seen in Night 2 minigame that Plushbear can actively speak to you while Afton is on screen, making it nearly impossible. Even in this location, the Plushie's appearance is altered. Considering that the Plushbear is supposed to comfort the crying child, it wouldn't make too much sense for Afton to intentionally make him look creepy and actually possessed, as it would defeat the whole point. So what we likely see in this location is the Plushbear's permanent state after it was possessed. The eyes no longer glow anymore since no spirit is possessing it anymore. But that would not explain why the Fredbear plush and the walkie-talkie are there at all. As for Plushbear, it could just be for study, as if William saw his son's plush toy get possessed, he would likely want to study it or even use it in his experiments. And as for the walkie-talkie, it could just be for the nightmares. As in the ultimate guide, the FNaF 1 destroyed phone call that plays is called a destroyed radio. So, that walkie-talkie could just be for the ambience phone call that plays throughout the night. Regarding Afton saying put back together, this was also said by Baby in the source code of teasers and by Michael Brooks, who was Golden Freddy in the fourth closet. So it isn't just unique to Afton himself, and pretty much anyone can say it. But if the Plushbear isn't Afton, who would it be? Well, to no one's surprise, I believe it is Charlie. Why I believe that is pretty simple. The Plushbear is caring and protecting. His opening dialogue starts with him comforting the crying child, telling him not to be scared and that he's with him. He even encourages the crying child to be strong and to face his fears, like when he faces the shadows and Fredbears, encouraging him to gain strength and get past them. This is all becoming of Charlie, who Henry says carried others in her arms. The Plushbear is also explicitly depicted as sitting above and on the grandfather's clock, and the song that plays from the puppet's music box is literally called My Grandfather's Clock. It is the puppet's theme song, which ties the plush to her. We can even find more evidence in that 6 cutscene, where the Plushbear makes the promise to put the crying child back together, which seems to result in him becoming Golden Freddy. And by this point in the franchise, the puppet was the only one known to give life to dead kids as animatronics. Not only that, but the crying child in this minigame parallels the crying puppet from FNaF 3, which in tandem with how the crying child's design matches the puppets, ties the puppet to him and the Night 6 cutscene. Also, as a bonus piece of evidence, in Hot 1-2's Puppet Master Challenge, when you input 1983 on the keypad, you get the Puppet Memory Plush. Keep in mind, this is Afton's private room, and what was in that private room? The Fredbear Plush. So while it probably does mean more than just that, it does seem to me to be clarifying that Afton isn't a plush, and it is actually Charlie. But with all this evidence in mind, it does seem to be the puppet Charlie Emily. Though some may say since the text color is different on Night 6, it has to be a different character. And while true the text color is different, I do think we misunderstood that. Remember, this is the crying child's mindscape, and he's hearing a voice speak to him, and the Plushbear represents that voice. That would be because it's the same voice from the crying child's perspective. While it would be different, it's likely stemming from the idea Plushbear is a role that the speaker pretends to be. While in Night 6, there's no more reason to pretend, as the crying child is, well, dying. They're speaking as themselves. Meaning, Scott didn't want to show 2 different characters, but rather revealed the character through the text change. The text color also matches the puppet's mask and is more ghostly, so it does work as a reveal for the character's identity. However, a big question is, if Charlie is the Plushbear, what does it mean for the story of FNaF Freddy's? Well, firstly, it would set in stone that Charlie died first, which for me personally, I always thought was pretty clear, but it is a hot debate nowadays, so there you go. But if Charlie did die first, that means if you believe that Afton is the Orange Man and Midnight Motorist, it would also confirm that the crying child is the runaway, and a lot of generic stuff like that I'm sure you've heard before. I would also argue though, it supports the MCI having happened already by the events of FNaF 4, due to the puppet using the plural we in reference to the classic plushies in the Night 6 cutscene. But that's a whole other discussion. I've done twice already and I'm not doing it again. What I do like though, is that does pretty much set in stone that FNaF 4 is still very much a paranormal story, following the storyline of the murdered kids from 1 to 3 in some form, and we're established that the crying child as Golden Freddy has a unique relationship with the puppet, which seems to be displayed in the Happiness Day minigames, and how the puppet and Golden Freddy parallel each other all the time across the games, being the only ones to share unique abilities as well. I explore this more deeply in my Midnight Motorist video, but I do plan to cover it again in a future video on Shattered Victim. In general though, I think it establishes that the spirits are still involved and relevant to FNaF 4, which I do think dominoes into the whole game being centered around them. I could also technically yap and go into ultra detail on each of these, but as I said, I already covered a lot of them and we're gone for way too long. But there is more of the Plushbear we have missed, details that could change everything we know about our psychic little friend, but we find this forgotten information in the worst of places, the FNaF books.
What game do you think you're playing?
By this point in the franchise, everyone's pretty much familiar with the FNaF books, and most would agree they are meant to provide clues and answers for the games, but many have overlooked details that may have been trying to tell us something about this little yellow bear. Details like a challenge, the most popular understanding we have of the character. I figure though, we should probably start from the earliest books to the latest. So starting off, we have to return to 2015 with the release of the SOLVES. The same year FNaF 4 was also released. In the SOLVES, it introduced Charlie Emily and her plush named Theodore, who was made by her father Henry to comfort Charlie. The plushie served a relatively minor role in these books, but many at the time did think it is similar to Plushbear, as it is a purple rabbit plush with the father's voice. Now though, I'm sure this isn't really groundbreaking, but let's now go to the fourth closet, the final chapter of the Charlie trilogy. Here, after Charlie was severely injured by Twisted and the Twisted Ones, Aunt Jenna rescued her and kept her safe in a box. However, when John and Marla had Theodore, he somehow and suddenly got possessed, sending a message to the both of them saying Shining Star, Silver Reef, which was the safe house Charlie is being kept at. While it was implied in the original novel, the graphic novel made it explicitly clear who was behind Theodore, and it was Charlie. Yes, somehow a Charlie bard possessed Theodore. Don't ask me, ask Scott Coffin. Now, putting that weird plot detail aside, this may have been further evidence for Charlie being the plush, but we're not done yet. Let's now go to Fast vs. Frights, where we're introduced to Jake in the story The Real Jake. In the story, Jake sadly had cancer and was slowly passing away, but Jake's parents, Maggie and Evan, create the Simon doll who represented the real Jake. This doll was used by Evan to communicate so he could comfort and watch his son. Later in the story, after Evan sadly passed away, Jake also passes away, possessing the Simon doll and later becoming the Stitch Ray, guiding and shepherding Andrew and the Everlogs, giving a happiest day to all the souls trapped in the ball pit. By the way, you should absolutely read this story. It is heartbreaking but incredibly well written. Please read it for yourself. But moving on, are you starting to see a pattern yet? Let's now go to the cliffs, where Robert buys a tag-along Freddy for his son Tyler. This Freddy doll monitors and comforts Tyler to keep him safe. Tyler though ends up going missing, and Robert is trying to find and save him. The story does frame Freddy as if he's a villain and evil, being behind Tyler's disappearance, but it's later revealed in the story he was actually trying to save Tyler by directing Robert to the cliffs where he was at. It was also heavily implied in the story that Freddy was supernatural in some way. Are you starting to see the trend here? Every single time, it shares similar elements. A plush is given by the father to their child. The father is benevolent and loving and wants the plush to comfort and watch them. The plush is always a good guy and tries to help and save others, and is often supernaturally possessed in some way. This is a repeated element with Theodore, Simon, and Tagalong Freddy. Even the Ultimate Guide connects Tagalong Freddy to Plushbear, so these stories are meant to tell us something. But what exactly are they trying to tell us? Well, I believe it establishes that Plushbear is a good guy, which eliminates Afton, Shadow Freddy, or any evil character as the plush or the final speaker. We can also narrow it down to Charlie as well, due to Charlie bot possessing Theodore to help her friends, and that Jake is very much a Charlie-like character, as he is based on positive emotions and carries others in his arms. As mentioned before, he even gives happiest days to all the souls trapped in the ball pit, and likewise, Evan's character is also closer to Henry as well. If that's our intended parallel, Charlie is very likely the plush. However, that's all simple to argue. What's more interesting is the father. The father is always the one to create or give the plush, which makes sense and is reasonable with William. What causes a problem there is that the father is always a good guy with benevolent intention. If we were to be consistent, unless we assume will care, it makes it very difficult for it to be Afton. While technically possible, I personally very much doubt will care. So if we assume that's not the case, this would mean whoever created the Plushbear could have originally been Afton. But who else could have made Plushbear? Well, the only one I could really think of is really just Henry, as it would match the parallel of Theodore and Evan and Jake paralleling Henry and Charlie. And Henry, even in the novels, is known for building toys for his children, toys that talk and interact with them. This would mean Henry made Plushbear to comfort and watch over Charlie or even her brother Sammy. But how does that even work? Well, I thought of two ideas that could maybe work, but the first one is quite reliant on a theory video I made on Midnight Motorist, where I discussed how I think the Quiet Child could be Henry's son Sammy, kidnapped by Afton, like how Garrett was taken in the movie. For more on that, you can go there. But under that theory, it is very possible Sammy, when kidnapped, had Plushbear with him, like how Garrett has his plane. So when he was taken, William stole it and corrupted it, twisting it to his own will to spy on Sammy and observe him. However, we can't take that idea and remove Sammy entirely from it. It is possible that when Charlie died, she had Plushbear, being her game version of Theodore, so when she was killed, William took it and, like with Garrett's plane, where he gave it to Vanessa, this time he gave it to the crying child, his son. If the crying child is Afton's biological son, I think this would likely have to be the case, as I find it very doubtful Afton would have had any good intentions making the Plushbear. Also, either of these would also give Charlie an emotional attachment to the Plushbear, which fits if she is possessing it. Something else I also found really interesting is that if this is true, it means Henry constructed the Plushbear, and thus, Plushbear's built-in voice would be Henry's. That makes it really cool because it means Charlie's haunting Plushbear and is using the built-in voice of her own father to communicate to the crying child. It could also support Henry being the orange guy as well, as they would share the similar yellow text since the plush would have his voice. Now, to be fair, that could complicate the point I made earlier that the crying child is hearing the same voice on night 6, but I do still feel like it works, and that is clear either way that the final speaker is the same character. Now, unfortunately, this is the point of the video where I go off my normal pills and I go a bit crazy, but I did want to discuss this as I do find it interesting worth noting, but I could be way off the mark here, but I want to bring it up anyway. Because what's also weird and timeline breaking is that this all means Henry is the owner tied to Plushbear. Then that means if you go to this location, things get really weird, as in SL the place is operating and pristine, it's not dirty. However, in the story Dataphobia, which is before SL, it describes the place as basically falling apart at the seams, dirty and old. This clearly isn't the case by this location, so someone has to be taking care of it, seemingly even after William is gone, which when you think about it, the only person that could be is Henry, the only owner remaining. But if that's true, that will also remind me of the novel trilogy, where the clear parallel to the SL bunker, the underground pizzeria, is under Henry's house, so it also supports Henry having some involvement with the bunker. Now, Henry being involved with circus babies could explain a couple of things, like on FNaF 6, he seems to know everything about the scooper, the front, etc. But you may be asking, how does any of that relate to Plushbear, the topic of the video? Well, remember what is in the SL bunker, the private room, which in complete contrast to Dataphobia, looks well not falling apart and more recently used. Even on the TV screens, there's paused footage. Look at the bed, there's a flashlight shining on it. It's recent footage. Also, if I remember correctly, even the Fredbear plush I don't think was said to be there during the story of Dataphobia, which would imply whoever is here recently is the one who placed it there, which under this theory would have to be Henry. But if Henry was in the private room recently, what is it even supposed to tell us? How is he involved with FNaF 4's nightmares, considering the whole point of that room is to tell us about the nightmares and experiment chambers? That's why to me, it all just feels so confusing, as we can clearly show through details and parallels that Henry is likely the one who made Plushbear. But when you consistently apply it across the series, it leads you down a rabbit hole that could just break the timeline. And honestly, I have zero clue how Henry's involved in the SL bunker or the private room besides being a co-owner and maybe grabbing blueprints. But would that really be it? Actually, you know what? Since I got a little idea on how to solve this, I'm going to declare all to be right now non-canon. Yup. Jokes aside, I can very easily see myself being wrong on this, but I did want to bring it up because I do feel if we follow the connections between Henry and Plushbear, it does connect Henry more deeply to the private room. How deep? I'm not sure. But regardless, what are my general conclusions? Well, I think with the evidence provided, we can safely say not only is Plushbear not willing or anyone evil, but is possessed by the spirit of Charlie, seeking to protect her friend, and that William did not create the Plushbear originally, and that most stole it and reused it for his own purposes, which he has done to Henry before in the novels. And as to how Henry ties into everything else, is something I want to encourage you all to discuss down below. What are your theories on how Henry fits into everything? What are your theories on Plushbear? Do the book parallels affect your interpretation? Do you interpret them differently? Let me hear those thoughts down below in the comments. By the way, if my voice did sound different occasionally throughout the video, it's because I was having a lot of audio issues and I had to re-record a lot of bits. I hope it wasn't that annoying. But regardless, I want to give a special thanks to my friend Captus for being the voice of Charlie. I think she did fantastic, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. Also, special thanks as well to my friend AllHallows for doing the plushie art. He is a fantastic and great artist. But now, I think I'll end it here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you don't want your Minecraft house to burn down. See you next time. See
Do you hear me? Wake up. There is a place where a tree of life resides, where many flock seeking its wisdom. But within lies something wrong. It has broken the timeline, hidden it among ages of hope. But I will reveal this detective. I will put it back.